This right here gonna be a cakewalk.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about Tekken and what Harada has said about it in the past. Now, before we dive into this conversation, what I do want to say at the start is that this video is not being made with the goals of like hating on Tekken or anything of that nature, right? We've already done that. Season 1, kind of mid. Season 2, we hope it will be better. The reason why I want to revisit some of these things that Harada said, I have a couple of clips and I also have some quotes from him, is because I think it's important when Harada is doing all of this yapping about what he wants to do, plans that he has, and then we get like a year or two later and then those things are actually in the game. I like to look at what he said about it versus reality, and I think it's important to do that because it gives a lot of context to the things that we're currently dealing with and looking at. Like, for example, this is the first example to show you what I mean. You have this news article discussion where Harada was talking about Tekken 8 before it was released. This goes back to when we only had 2 trailers. We had the one trailer for Sony and we had the second trailer at the Game Awards. It was when they first showed us Jun Kazama. And in this, he made a little joke, but now that the game is out, now that we have a whole year of the game to look at, we can look at this and compare and see how true this joke actually is. So this is from an IGN news article. It says, if you're worried that June appearance means that Harada isn't thinking about throwing her son or anyone else into a volcano, think again. This is a quote from Harada. The first people that came to mind were perhaps certain executives at our company, Harada says. They change quite frequently, and some of them are only interested in obtaining the highest profits possible to further their careers, and they have no regard for development schedules or brand timelines. So some of them quickly flash into my head. But if I had to think and I had to pick a Tekken character, it's tough because most of them will probably survive if we look at past instances. And then you can see where he basically talked about Jin pushing him to the next level, and that's probably what they will do. Now, as we can see with the game coming out, Jin kind of went through that. He was really weak at the start. They had him go through a lot of struggles, but then he eventually overcame that to push him to the next level. So that's one thing there. But then two, if you look at the part there where he's talking about, you know, characters surviving death, of course this refers to Heihachi, right? And then the final thing that he talks about here is the Bandai Namco executives being interested in milking the game. We saw a surprise shop. They went after mods immediately after, but then also what they did was they chose not to balance the game, but they consistently updated the shop. Some people don't care, but some people just kind of get a little frustrated. Even with some of the more recent patches that they did, they really didn't change because here's what they said as well. They said we will fix bugs and glitches, but they did not do that. There's many bugs and glitches that have existed for months, some a year at this point, and they have not did that. But what they consistently did was fill the game with skins and recycled content. So this is one example of, like, when you look at what Harada said in the past and you compare it to what's happening now, the writing was on the wall in a lot of senses. The next 3 clips that I want to show you guys comes from Harada's bar. Now, the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I often reference these clips here from Harada, and previously they were unattainable. One of these clips was privated because on release it got so much backlash, and like I would always like reference it, but now we have that video being unprivated. I don't know why, but I was able to get the clip, and now we will show that clip and we will talk about it. And the same thing goes for the other 2 videos. I think it's important to look at how Harada views other fighting games and Tekken and all of it. So we'll start off with the first clip.
過去作もだから同じように被んないようにしてるんですよ、ちゃんと。
ああ、みんなね、空気読んで。
同じ年の同じような時、同じような夏とかに出たら、
発表とかもじゃあそうなんですね。
お互い潰し合っちゃうでしょ。
なるほど、なるほど。
別に談合とかじゃないですよ。談合とかじゃないけど、お互いの空気の読み合い。
空気の読み合いです。
それはそうっす。某王さん。それとファイターこの日にこんな発表大事なやつやるねんって言ってきたら、俺ら実はその時にこんなこと重大発表しようとしたらよ。王さんここだけっていうのは向こうにどけてもらうみたいな。そういう、もう俺ら格闘ゲームの始祖としてのストリートファイターというかカプコンさんは、それはね、商売の規模とかね、その マーケティングの規模とか会社の規模で、そういう問題じゃないだろうと。それは敬意を示さなきゃってことで。
So in this clip, Harada is talking about Tekken's rivalry with Street Fighter and how they would often shift around their dates because they do not want to crush each other, release games at the same time, and even in some cases release characters. One example of that was Akuma releasing like immediately after season 2 announcement for Street Fighter, but then it seems like Lydia was pushed back so far and the players were scratching their heads like, what's going on? Maybe that is something that the developers did to give Street Fighter that space, because Harada says in this clip that he respects them for being the first fighting game. You know, also in this clip, Harada is talking about how Bandai Namco is a big company, a powerful company. We talked about a couple of days ago how they want to step up their marketing. They want to, Bandai Namco, they want to put more resources into pushing Tekken, Soul Calibur, Elden Ring, the Tales series, many of their properties, Pac-Man as well. They want to put money into it to increase the brand awareness of it. And this is something that Harada is referring to here, talking about how Bandai Namco is a bigger company than Capcom. It's always funny how they say these things, but then when you look at the reality of the equation, Street Fighter is bigger and more successful. But then also too, and this is something that FDX been highlighting on Twitter, and I think it's also important to mention, but when you look at the social media presence, Street Fighter does a very good job of that. When you just scroll through their Twitter feed or any of their social medias, you can see that they're very active with posting memes, with posting videos, with posting a lot of stuff just to keep the online discussion going. Tekken, they really don't do that. They only post like updates, which is cool. Street Fighter does that as well. But then also they only post like merch and stuff like that, right? Where's the memes? Where's the laughs? Where's the community highlight posts, right? Street Fighter's always retweeting fan art and just many different things. And I think Tekken needs to catch up to Street Fighter in that way. Tekken, they're making a lot of progress, especially with Tekken 8, but there's still a long way to go, even if you compare them to some of the other Japanese companies, right? So I just say this to highlight how Harada talks about how Bandai Namco is so good and so great, but there's a lot of room for improvement. The next clip.
人気タイトルにしてほしいのは、実は、これ近しい話は何度もしたかもしれないけど、それはストリートファイターにしろバーチャルファイターにしろそうなんですけど、結構格ゲーメーカーはね、みんな作ってる側も思ってるんですよ。普通って言ったら変だけど、この業界結構面白くて、競合に対してこけろってそんなにね、まあ思ってる人いるかもしれないけど、競合が売れた方が、自分らも売れるんですよ。基本的には、そのジャンル自体が広がった方が、例えばね、ゲームセンターって分かりやすいですよね。そうですね。ゲームセンターって場所の取り合いじゃないですか。ゲームセンターって一回ビデオゲームコーナーが縮小したり、一回体感ゲームコーナーのエリアが縮小して、プライズに食われると、二度と戻んない。
And this is something that I often refer to is about how Harada always says that he wants every fighting game to succeed, especially Street Fighter. When one fighting game succeeds, they all benefit from it. They all share the same roof at EVO. When 6,000 people show up to see Street Fighter, when that Street Fighter tournament's not going on or the players isn't active, they're walking around the venue interacting with other games, and they may try a new game and it may become their new favorite game, their second favorite game. But then also the example that he brings up about the arcades is pretty interesting. He basically says that when a fighting game fails, they never recover. And he used arcades as an example. You have arcade cabinets, right? That's where you play a fighting game. But when that game becomes unpopular, they replace it with a crane game or just one of those generic, like, arcade games, right? And the arcade cabinet can never get that spot back. There was an arcade that I went to when Tekken 7 released, right, in arcades, and the whole entire thing was like a carnival, and there was like a little section for the fighting games, but it was like 8 cabinets, and that was it. It was like 8 cabinets. 2 was for Tekken 7, and then the 2 was for another game, and 2 was for another game, and 2 was for another game. But that's how much the arcades have been overtaken by other things. And this is what Harada be trying to stress about. He wants fighting games to recover the ground that they lost. So this is why when he's trying to make the game super casual and super open to casuals, it's not because he's trying to ruin the formula, it's that he's trying to recover the ground that he feels that he lost. Now, in my opinion, I think they did it to themselves, because while they were focusing super hard on arcades, which is a sector that they were always going to lose, other games were focusing on online, and they allowed other games like Call of Duty, etc., to basically build a massive fan base place in the early days, and now they're the top dogs. I think if Tekken would have went as hard as they are now in the Tekken 3, Tekken 4 era, they would have did a much better job of maintaining a large portion of their audience. When people talk about Tekken, they talk about it as if it's this thing that doesn't exist anymore. Oh, I remember that game from my childhood. It's like, bro, the game is still going on right now. Oh, it is? That's crazy. And then they go back to playing like FC, you know? Final clip.
Being able to have a direct connection with people that are working on the game, that are passionate about the game succeeding, completely changed my perception of the game. Because, you know, it's very easy for the community to complain about things like balance or things like where the game's at and content for the game.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that balance is not just about the competitive side. It's about sales. It's also about bringing in new people. So I quickly found a newfound respect for the development side, because it's very difficult for you guys. I see the kind of messages you guys get on social media.
So this is a very controversial clip. When this first aired, this video was privated and taken down, and it was lost to time. I had a little 4-second clip of it, and that was all I was able to acquire before they republicized the video. And it's pretty interesting. For those of you who don't know who the guy on the left is, this is Markman. He is basically like one of the founders of the FGC on the Tekken side. Evo would be radically different if it wasn't for him. You know, he does commentary. He does a lot of work. He works with a lot of developers, especially Tekken. You know, he's on here talking about game development and a lot of insider knowledge with Harada. And what he says about, you know, balancing was not what the players wanted to hear. Balancing is not about competition. Balancing is about sales. It's about bringing in new players. This was said before Tekken 8 was even, you know, confirmed, was even a thing. I believe this was around the time of Tekken 7 5.0. And when this was said, players were so upset. But then all of that backlash that this video received did not stop anything, because you see with Tekken 8, all of the comeback mechanics and the, you know, trying to cater to casuals they did. So this is them telling us what they wanted to do, and then Tekken 8 is doing that. Now, they are receiving some backlash, I could say, for, you know, catering to casuals and making the game too aggressive. And they're trying to pull it back. You know, when the Tekken Talk happens, when Season 2 releases, we'll see how much of this ideology still remains and how much of lesson learning is present, right? But these are just some clips that I dug up in the past and I often refer to all the time. And finally being able to show you guys the clips themselves, I just felt like I needed to do that so you guys can see that these things actually exist and these conversations actually happened. It's more so like showing you my sources, right? A video about receipts. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Like, subscribe, and bye-bye.